This morning, the Iowa caucus is now just 24 hours away. We are watching the race for second place. Will winter weather affect turnout? Will Ron DeSantis drop out this week? And will Texans have a choice of candidates in 50 days? Inside Texas politics in Des Moines this morning. Most all Texas officials are skipping Iowa this week, a change from years past. Republican Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne on what she is watching for from afar. Governor Greg Abbott ramping up rhetoric against immigrants. Is he positioning himself to be a vice presidential pick? Plus, Houston's new mayor. Can he dig the city out of a mountain of problems? Mayor John Whitmire in his first interview with us in his new position.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good morning from Des Moines, Iowa. Before we get to the first state in the country to cast votes in the 2024 presidential election, let's first talk some Texas politics. Governor Greg Abbott ramping up dangerous rhetoric against undocumented immigrants. Abbott told a right-wing radio program that the only reason Texas was not shooting migrants is because the federal government would charge them with murder. Democrats blasted Abbott, though, for even suggesting it. The mayor and city council in Eagle Pass along the border are upset with the governor and the Texas Department of Public Safety. DPS took over a city park there in Eagle Pass on the banks of the Rio Grande without city permission. The state is using the park to stop immigrants from crossing illegally. The governor's spokeswoman, though, cited an emergency declaration that the governor signed 2 years ago. And an effort is underway right now to recall Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson. An activist named Devontae Peters says Johnson missed too many city council meetings last year and he switched from Democrat to Republican after he won re-election. Peters, though, needs 103,000 signatures by March 5th to get a recall election. The Dallas County Democratic Party also considered such a move last year as well. But politically, everyone will be watching Iowa this week. Right now, we are 24 hours away from the first votes cast in the 2024 presidential election. What should you expect over the next 24 hours? And will Texans have as many choices as Iowans do right now? Those are questions we put to Avery Harper. She is the Deputy Political Director at ABC News and also our guest on the latest episode of Y'all-itics. Here's a preview. If Nikki Haley finishes second here, that will propel her to go into New Hampshire, which is next weekend. And she's virtually tied up there, I think, with some of the last polls I saw, with Donald Trump. If she can finish second here on Monday night, does this mean she has a path, albeit a very slim one, to victory to be the nominee?
Listen, her campaign would argue even if she finishes in third place, right, that she is also positioned for a bounce going into New Hampshire. I think also what Nikki Haley has done is setting very low expectations or no expectations at all when it comes to her performance here in Iowa. If she comes in third place behind Ron DeSantis, she's performing at expectations. There were no expectations that she was going to come in second place. If she overperforms, if she beats Ron DeSantis, that could give her a bump.
And if DeSantis finishes third, is he done?
He could be. We know that his campaign is adamant that they are going to continue, but we know that he has invested a lot of time and money and effort here in the state of Iowa. He is someone who has traveled to all 99 counties of the state, has really pushed the pavement, talking to voters across the state. He has establishment support from the Iowa governor, from evangelical leaders in the state. And so the outlook for him, if he does not perform well here, is no better in New Hampshire. It's actually much worse for him. He is trailing behind both former President Trump and Nikki Haley when you look at polling there.
When you go all in like that, if you can't pull off even a second place finish, that's a tough thing to rebound from for sure.
It's totally difficult for him, and I think also when you think about donor support, right, the folks who are going to be powering his campaign through, lack of confidence could hamper any campaign efforts going forward. Generally unpopular in this current Republican Party to be anti-Trump. And I think that's the line that both DeSantis and Haley have tried to walk. I don't anticipate, as this field continues to narrow, that a Nikki Haley is going to take sharper aim at former President Trump.
You don't think she will?
No, I do not think that she is going to. She also always says when she's on the campaign trail that folks want me to, to take direct aim at him. She's gotten questions from voters on this, but she's walking a fine line. She does not want to alienate those Trump supporters who could come her way at some point. I also think it's really interesting that she has not shot down the question about if she would serve as former President Trump as VP if he were to become the nominee.
You can download our entire conversation with Avery and what to expect at the Iowa caucuses tomorrow. Just look for Yolitics wherever you get your podcasts. You know, unlike Iowa caucuses in years past, not too many Texas officials are in this state campaigning with their candidate of choice. Most of them are watching all this unfold from afar. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne is one of them. She is a Republican who represents North Texas, and she has already declared her support for Donald Trump. Congresswoman, welcome back to the program. Let's start with Iowa. Donald Trump way ahead there. New Hampshire is much closer between former President Trump and Governor Nikki Haley there too. Do you see any scenario at all, though, as this unfolds where someone other than Donald Trump is going to be the nominee?
It does not seem likely at this point, but look, stranger things have happened. But I think what you're seeing, especially with what's going on with the DOJ and the fight against keeping Trump off the ballot in a number of states, is only making his popularity soar amongst not only Republicans, but I think even those independents who are looking at this and just seeing how horrible it is that they're trying to take his name off the ballot. So I think the harder they push at him, the more the stronger that he's getting in the polls, and more people are supporting him.
I'm curious. I want to ask you about something happening in the Republican Party, because we've seen this. You've seen this as well. Both Haley and DeSantis have made similar comments like this, that they say that Trump cannot win. Haley said something that I've heard from other Republicans too, and this is a quote from her. She said, Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president, and the only way we're going to win, Haley said, is if we have a new generational leader that leaves the negativity and the baggage behind and looks forward to the problems ahead. What's your reaction to that?
That sounds great. I haven't seen it. People complain about negative campaigning, but at the end of the day, negative campaigning actually does work. People appreciate hearing why they need to vote for a candidate, but why they don't need to vote for another candidate. I would argue that one of the reasons why Trump has gotten so much support is it's not simply Trump. He is running on his successes during his first 4 years. And when you look at those, considering that he was having to fight the Republican machine his first 2 years of office, what he was able to accomplish was considerable. People can hate his tweets all they want, but at the end of the day, when they compare what has happened under Biden in just 3 years compared to what had happened under Trump, look, you're looking at the economy, we're looking at what was happening in our border under Trump. All of those things are better. Well, the other thing that Trump, I think, brings to the table that I haven't seen from any of the other candidates is a really strong team.
How concerned are you about all the talk that Trump might be a dictator? Liz Cheney said this might be the last vote Americans ever take.
I think it's ridiculous. I think they're doing that to get their name back out there, to hold strong and to scare people. I don't think people believe it. I think it's ridiculous. And outside of the Beltway, that's not what people are talking about. People at home are not talking about January 6th. Only people who live in D.C. seem to think the world revolves around Washington.
Let's shift off and talk about what's happening in Congress, where you're getting paid to help solve problems there. Speaker Johnson reached a deal to keep the government open. It's a $1.66 trillion deal. It's more than the one that cost Speaker McCarthy his job. I know you guys have not seen all the fine particulate of this yet, but is this something you can support, or is this something you oppose?
Well, look, I think we have got to get control of our spending. I think it's excessive. What we have seen in the last 3 years has just been excessive. Look, we have a $34 trillion debt right now. We added $1 trillion this past month alone. We have got to change the way that we look at spending in DC. And so when I'm looking at a spending package, obviously I have not seen the bill text yet, so I've got to see what that looks like. But are we being serious about cutting down the spending? Are we setting up a debt and deficit commission that's going to be looking at it and taking apart where can we cut? Where do we have to spend? Are we looking at what's going on at the border? Because right now I haven't seen any kind of solutions that take seriously the wartime scenario that we're seeing at our border. And unless I see all those things in place, I don't know that's something I can support.
Congressman Chip Roy is not even ruling out maybe replacing Speaker Johnson. Is that something you could see come to fruition?
We are down to a very narrow majority right now. We've got Scalise out. We've got Bill Johnson, who is going to be retiring at the end of the month. We don't have George Santos's vote now, and we lost Kevin McCarthy back in December. So we have a very, very narrow majority. We have got to make sure that we are using that and using it effectively. But as strong as we can make Speaker Johnson when he goes into those meetings to negotiate is, I think, as strong as you're going to be able to see a package come out.
Congresswoman, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming up next here, John Whitmire spent 50 years representing Houston at the state capitol. This month, though, he took over as mayor of Houston and is telling us his hometown faces a mountain of problems. Inside Texas Politics from the Iowa caucuses. Back in just a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics from Des Moines, Iowa, just ahead of the Iowa caucuses tomorrow. Let's focus on Houston for a moment. The state's largest city has a brand new leader facing a lot of old problems there on the southeast coast. John Whitmire spent 50 years representing Houston at the state capitol. This month, though, he was sworn in as mayor. Mr. Mayor, welcome to the program here. From the state capitol to City Hall, now you've said priorities are public safety, improving city streets, on-time trash pickup, even at your house, I believe you mentioned not long ago, approving building permits faster. There's a lot on your desk, so thanks for the time here, but what's the priority for you? What do you tackle first?
Public safety will be our number one priority, followed closely by infrastructure, quality of life issues such as garbage pickup, just really making a large city work better, more efficient, more responsive. We have just neglected some maintenance and some city services, and we have broken water lines, partly caused by the drought, but just the aging of our infrastructure, and our streets, quite frankly, are probably at an all-time worst condition. A lot on my plate, but I'm structuring a really good team, and I expect the public to hold me accountable.
Mayor, let's talk city spending here for a moment. Houston, as you know, spends a couple of $100 million more than it actually takes in every year. You've talked about auditing every department, but do you expect cuts to city services or any city staff layoffs to help make up for that shortfall?
You know, we won't know until we see what the shortfall is. The realization is that the city's operating now off of federal ARP money. Actually paid our firefighters with one-time federal funding, which obviously was not good management. Until we get in and audit, we won't know exactly what a ongoing shortfall is, but the city has had shortfalls for many years. The books were balanced by selling city assets, properties, one-time income, and we just can't continue to do that. I spend a lot of time on financial matters. We're going to look to new sources, such as partnering with the county. Our TERS and management districts are going to have to assume some responsibility for their services like infrastructure and public safety. We're going to make sure everything is very efficient. You know, I got an email from a Houstonian today. Why don't you just go across the board and cut 10%? Well, we've looked at that. The problem is the huge share of the budget is fire and police.
Firefighters, of course, have been making most of the news since you took office at the first of the year here, been without a contract, of course, for 7 years. You said that you would drop the city's lawsuit against the firefighters union. Of course, you did that and negotiate a deal. How long do you expect that to take? And do you think that you can do something your predecessor didn't?
Well, certainly I can do something my predecessor didn't do, because we're going to sit down with the firefighters and we're going to go to arbitration. In fact, we're meeting as we talk. The attorneys are putting some guardrails in place and trying to identify our differences. You know, it's affected our public safety. We're having a very difficult time attracting fire cadets because they don't know what the contract that they would work under would present. So we're going to work out something with firefighters. It'll be fair to the taxpayers and all Houstonians, and it's going to be fair to firefighters. You can't, in my judgment, have the community that we want while you're fighting your firefighters in court.
How long do you think it would take? Any rough idea on getting this thing hammered out?
It's going to be a few months.
Mayor, congratulations. You got a lot of work to do, so good luck to you, sir.
Yeah, let's stay in touch.
The roundtable is ready to talk Texas and Iowa politics when Inside Texas Politics returns here in Des Moines.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Of course, I Am Mitra joins us every week from the Texas Tribune in Austin, and Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, let's start with you. Governor Abbott really ramping up the rhetoric against immigration, illegal immigrants, migrants coming from everywhere, even asylum seekers. When he, told that right-wing radio show the other day that the only reason the state troopers aren't shooting migrants is because the Biden administration would charge them with murder. What's the play here? It's an election year, of course. We expect rhetoric like this, but is Abbott trying to become a vice presidential pick?
Well, the most important thing Abbott's doing is just bashing away at Joe Biden, trying to weaken the Democrats as much as he can, help the Republican ticket not only nationally, but in Texas and in local communities in Texas. He's got a couple of plays here. He could be positioning for vice president, although his consultant denies that he wants anything like that. Basically in that race, as Ron DeSantis' fortunes fall, Greg Abbott's fortunes rise. Abbott might not be a Trump choice for the ticket. He might be a Trump choice for the Supreme Court. He might be Nikki Haley's choice for the ticket.
Let's talk about his fundraising prowess. He continues to raise the most money of any lawmaker in Texas. He got $19 million over the last 6 months. Tell us what he plans to use this money for, because he's not up for re-election.
Yeah, but he's definitely going to be a force in the campaign here in the Republican primary, particularly statewide. He's been outspoken in talking about school vouchers and a school choice program as a priority. It didn't go through despite the multiple special sessions he called, and he's been very open about going after opponents of school choice. And so, now with this kind of big war chest that he continues to have and build, that's where he's kind of made his intent to go after a lot of Republican reps who didn't support the plan that he was touting.
And can those Republican reps overcome this huge amount of money that he might be spending?
We have to remember that a lot of these are House districts, with districts with populations, a little over 100,000 people. So a lot of this is going to be some retail politics as well. It's going to be a matter of how well the incumbent is known within their district, and so certainly Abbott's going to have an impact, but it's also about the relationships that these representatives have. So it's going to be interesting to watch in the House.
And Bernadine, of course, the fundraising is one issue. The ramping up the rhetoric is a second issue. What do you think is going on here with the governor?
I think that he's just showing that he wants to win this debate on immigration, but what it appears is he's doing whatever it is. If he wants to be a vice president on a ticket as a vice president, he's just coming across as uncaring. Because to use that kind of rhetoric, we've already looked at the January 6th where former President Trump used those kinds of words, and look what happened. But in terms of fundraising, he has a lot of money, but he's running against those reps who are already in their districts. And I think what Ian said is all about relationships. And keep in mind, he has not done a good job when he's running against those incumbents, because the last time he did this, it was like 2-1 where he only won one race. So we'll see how it goes, but he's not coming across as any kind of, I don't want to say that he just looks as if he doesn't know what he's doing, but he knows exactly what he's doing, but it's just coming across so cruel.
Bernadine, he is kind of outshowing Ken Paxton's endorsements. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, let's talk about the Iowa caucuses here for a moment, Bud. You mentioned Nikki Haley a moment ago. If she is the nominee, of course, she trails Donald Trump here in this state. She's battling for second place. Her trajectory is going up. But what would a victory look like for her here? She's not going to be, that close to Trump here, but she's a lot closer in New Hampshire.
Honestly, I just think finishing second is a victory for her. We talked about Ron DeSantis for a year and a half. We've been talking about Nikki Haley for 3 or 4 weeks. I think the fact that she was able to come from behind in Iowa really sets her on a trajectory to continue to rise in the campaign. She looks like she's doing well in New Hampshire. She looks like she's building a challenge and rallying all the people who don't want Trump, and then some of the people who like Trump but aren't sure he could beat Joe Biden.
And of course, I and anybody who watches the Iowa caucuses know that Iowans are, of course, first in the nation, but they're not always the best at picking the winners that go on to the White House. Ted Cruz won the caucuses here in 2016. Trump won it in 2020. He didn't get elected president again. What are you going to be watching for on Monday night?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, also, some of these expectations are what the candidates themselves have set. Ron DeSantis said, they were going to win Iowa. That doesn't look likely. And if Nikki Haley shows that she's showing more momentum than DeSantis, that's a big win for her. And, the other thing I'm watching for, too, is turnout at these caucuses, too. I mean, I'm glad, Jason, that you're there, but I'm certainly happy to not be in that cold Iowa weather. And that's going to be impacting, too. So that's going to be a factor in this as well.
It is cold indeed, but last few minutes here, I want to ask Bernadine about this issue, and if we have time, go around the roundtable here on this one too. It is that odd week again in Texas. Of course, Monday tomorrow is MLK Day, but then later in the week is Confederate Heroes Day, a state holiday in Texas. Bernadine, is this ever going to change?
No, not anytime soon, because in the state of Texas, a lot of our Republican legislators are trying to, are successfully getting rid of anything that's what the equity, anything that's getting away from discrimination, they're going towards it. And so they're not going to get rid of their Confederate Heroes Day. Now, they can't get rid of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but it's so ironic because Martin Luther King fought for equality, whereas the Confederate heroes fought to get rid of, they were to keep slavery. So it's really interesting.
Fought to split it. Bernadine, I got to cut you off there. We are out of time. Monday night, of course, is the caucuses. We hope you join us again next Sunday for Inside Texas Politics. We'll see you then. Take care.